The ego is the system that runs your sense of self. It is made out of thought patterns, emotions, and behavior loops, and the stories that try to hold it all together. Left unchecked, it creates endless existential searching, chronic disconnection, and the persistent sense that something is wrong. The goal of my videos is clarity, to see your identity and its contradictions for what they are, named precisely, to finally understand what it is that we're all running away from. Telling you that I was obsessed about what truth is would be an understatement. I cannot possibly communicate to you how obsessed I was about finding out what is true. And I used to think that I could approach knowing through frameworks, research, and belief structures. That without some framework to hold on to, life is kind of meaningless, and I cannot just accept it for what it is, as I saw so much pain and chaos in the world, and I haven't signed up for my own existence, and everything seemed so weird that I needed to understand what is really behind the veil, so to say. But what I found out over the years is that the more I investigated belief structures and reality models, the more rigid my perception became. The more I needed reality to conform to my own expectation of what reality should be like, and not what it actually was like. And the struggle became clearer the more I noticed how everybody seems to have a piece of the puzzle, and everybody seems to contradict each other in some form or another. And then whenever my expectations didn't match up to reality, I suffered. I wanted reality to be made out of consciousness, and then I noticed in which ways this isn't true, and then it hurt. Or I wanted reality to be purely materialistic and purely physical, and then I figured out how much more, fluid everything is, and then I kind of got scared of that too. And it always was the fear of not knowing what is going on. And you can see that most people pride themselves in, not knowing what is going on too in these circles. Like when somebody is, very skeptical, very scientific, very rationally minded, then there's this sense that if you're very skeptical, you're very intelligent. So you believe in rationality as some core foundational way you view the world, and at the same time, you kind of admit that you don't know anything and that you can't know anything. Or if you double down on this, then you believe that truth can really not be known at all, which, if you just think about the statement, it is contradictory, right? Like if I make the claim truth can never be known, then the question becomes, is this a truth claim, or what am I talking about? So the actual state of not needing beliefs and not needing to know what is true in some shape or form is kind of like a higher state of mind. Because when I looked at my peers who weren't that into philosophy and not into this existential madness, I did kind of look down on them like, wow, these plebs just are satisfied with how life appears to them instead of investigating the true nature. But then I guess I also was kind of jealous because, wow, they are not fueled with anxious thoughts about the heat death of the universe. Wow, they can just wake up in the morning and do their own chores. And honestly, a lot of this was also lack of empathy on my part when I was, just a teenager, because I thought that I'm so deep and everybody's just so shallow, which, tells a lot about how I looked at people more so than how people looked at life. So in the way that existence or reality is structured, makes it so that it is very difficult to come and claim that you know what is true without seeming arrogant about it or without giving some sort of, guru, priest, prophet energy. And that's also why I struggled so much building this channel in the way I've built it, because, sometimes I just wanted to be very bold. And then I noticed that especially spiritual audiences who don't have like the philosophical frameworks to kind of categorize things, they start to either idealize you and think you're some sort of messiah, or they are extremely skeptical, and then you're just a scammer, right? Because anybody who claims to know the truth must be lying. So I also had kind of the same mindset, actually, where I, just was skeptical of everything and everyone until I started to notice that, if I try to grasp at truth with belief systems and frameworks, then it is truly impossible to know it, because they are just maps of the truth. They're not the same thing as the actual territory of life. They are abstractions by nature. So then I thought, okay, in order to become more authentic with the pursuit of truth, I probably should look in the way I have my own belief systems and my own identity models and ideologies that are probably making me quite ignorant, like everybody else seems to be ignorant of everything that isn't in their own reality model. And then I started to question everything, and I questioned my own understanding of truth, my own understanding of belief systems, and all of this stuff. And there's this underlying feeling too, then, okay, I'm super skeptical, I'm very intelligent, I cannot know the truth. But a crucial shift in this mechanism was when I noticed that, as much as I can reject belief systems and I can admit to myself that I've been wrong about stuff, there's stuff I truly do know. And pretending I don't know them feels like false humility. And you can get at different levels to this, right? And it's always difficult because it goes into epistemology, which is the nature of how you can know anything to begin with. So there are so many layers to this, right? Because I could tell you that I know that the theory of evolution from Darwin is real and it's true, and this is how we humans have developed into these bodies. And now you have a debate, right? Like, oh, how could you possibly know all of the scientific data? How did don't you listen to like the Gospels, and why are not these things true? And then you can debate with people all the time. And I would use the word knowing here anyway, although I am not a scientific researcher, but I have a good confidence of my understanding of how biology works and how evolution works, and therefore I think it's true. So now the question is this knowing or is this a belief? And if you press me on this and you really push me on this on some ultimate level, I can concede to you that in some way it's a belief, because I have not actually done the research. Like, not to the extent a real biologist would have, right? Like, there's a reason you can study for years in university for this stuff, because the stuff is way more complicated than everybody wants to pretend these things to be. But a lot of stuff is just simple, just checks you can do. Like, I know that always like religious folks ask like the simplest questions, like if humans came from monkeys, then why are there still monkeys around? And these questions just really show that the person doesn't want to know the answer, because the answer is not difficult to find out if you just want to read a little bit about the topic. And from there, you can quickly dismiss people, because you see they don't actually care about the answer. They just want to question the validity of the claim, so they don't have to really think about it. This happens with so many scientific facts where people just don't want to understand, how do we know the stuff? It's not just that we know it, but how do we know it, and why are we so confident in these things? And if you understand how the stuff works, then you can, with reasonable state of mind, say, I know this is the case. I know that the Earth moves around the sun and not the other way around, even though I have not been in space and looked at it myself. But still, if I want to know what is actually fully the truth, like the complete ultimate truth nature of existence and reality, and like the metaphysical stuff, then this isn't enough, because maybe your senses are deceiving you, or more so, you actually don't have the sense data to verify that this is the case. And from there, you might get into this weird, agnostic funk, where you believe that, truth maybe exists, maybe it doesn't exist. Who can really tell? But the ego cannot tolerate not knowing. And uncertainty does feel like a threat to its own survival, because it makes it so that it cannot predict what is going to happen next. So it grabs onto all of these belief systems in order to create the illusion of solidity. Because if you believe that, your own mental framework is just the truth and you don't need to question it, then you can be very comfortable in, this model, even though it probably is hurting you to some extent, because there's just a lot of cognitive dissonance that you need to block out. Cognitive dissonance basically means that you see contradictions in your worldview and reality, and just need to ignore a ton of stuff, which drags down your like processing system. It's just not very good. Except if you're extremely, extremely efficient at being ignorant, then it might seem like you can get away with it, but on the long term, you don't. So then if you look at belief systems, you can see that, yeah, you can hold them lightly. Like even a thing as fundamental as evolutionary biology is not something that if I say that I know it with certainty, my identity is really that wrapped up in it. Like if something was discovered 1 week from now that completely contradicts the evolutionary theory of Darwin, which to be honest is very, 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 very difficult. But if this were to happen, then I would update my beliefs, right? That's the point of being open-minded, caring for the truth, and also holding your own belief system slightly. So there is, though, a deeper level of certainty here that you can find that I think this seeking for truth is really about. Because it is not just about like facts of how this universe is structured, but it is how you can truly know it without being able to be wrong, without being able to doubt it. And this is then being in direct contact with truth. And this is why it becomes so mystical and suspicious when people talk in this manner, because how could you know? If your epistemology doesn't allow for a framework like this, if in your own understanding of reality, you are always separated from physical matter, separated from reality, and just always rendering reality in a complete, hallucinatory way, as if you have no real interactions with it, then it doesn't make any sense to claim that. But now you've done something very interesting, because the moment you think about life this way, then there is no truth at all. If you believe that you cannot really have access to truth, like if you're a non-realist and you think all of it is just kind of like, this distance idea of, on one hand, you have found deep wisdom in not being attached to any belief system, right? And you can probably feel the wisdom in it. But then it can also happen, that you don't stake a position, and you're kind of, wishy-washy in your, worldview, when there are just certain things that are just true and just wrong, and you don't really want to commit to any of those. And this also kind of can keep you ignorant. Because on a very important layer, if this was the case, if there was truly no truth beyond your, conscious perception, then what are we really referencing when we say reality? What are we really referencing if we say truth? If we cannot come to any common coherent idea of what truth means, then how are we even being, like, how are we surviving in the first place? Because then we could not agree on what survival means. We could not agree on anything if we claim the truth doesn't exist. So at least on a relative level, truth must exist. And anything beyond that is kind of like the same as believing in a god, like just superstitiously without any evidence. Because if you claim that you cannot ever know truth, but there is this thing like the objective world, but you cannot access it, then isn't this like the same as a superstition? How do you even know that then an objective world exists? So this doesn't make much sense. There aren't really conclusions you can use to reason yourself into absolute truth without something that is before all of the rationality comes into place. So if there is a way to interface with reality, no matter what way it is, in our case through our biological senses, then you must also be interfacing with some sort of truth. And you can see this very clearly when you have conversations about these topics. You can notice that people are highly defensive against certain ideas. For example, the religious fundamentalist hearing about the idea of evolution. You will quickly notice that they do actually not want to hear you out, and they want to stay in their own model of the world. Now, I'm going to claim that the fact that this dynamic is possible in the first place shows that truth must exist. If this wasn't the case, then there would be nothing to defend against. And I'm not saying that it must be true because you can defend against it, but clearly there are opposite forces at play trying to battle each other out. One belief system against another, or like one reality model against another. So at least as like worldviews, these two must exist, and they try to cohere and fight each other. So there's something true happening, at least on this psychological mapping type of way. And the emotional charge underlying belief systems is what actually is fueling the thing. So beyond just the rationality that might make sense, beyond the evidence that you might see, for most people, there's an emotion that even comes before the sense data, because the emotion has been stored through past experiences. And then when something triggers a debate, then this emotion comes up, you defend your worldview, and you don't realize that all your logic is just there to defend the emotion you're feeling. And this is what's really funny. It's really funny that everybody is super intellectual, super spiritual, super smart about all of this stuff, but at the end, we are all just crying little babies not wanting our worldview to be destroyed. The wisdom of the spiritual seeker is the wisdom of wanting to destroy your own worldview. The real practice of psychological inquiry is consistently proving yourself wrong until there's nothing more to prove wrong. And in a way, this is really the scientific mindset, right? Like, let me see in which ways my hypothesis or my theory can be disproven. And if you are very smart about your own psychology and your own introspection, you use the exact same mindset for it. And then your ego doesn't, follow into these like loops of self-validation. And instead you find pride in investigating what is wrong about what you think. Just be careful to not use skepticism as the new identity that you never deconstruct. Because if you really want to know truth, you must deconstruct skepticism itself. If not, then you'll always just be in a loop questioning what you already have figured out. And there you can get some deep insights into the nature of yourself when you start to notice, oh, wow, I actually know more with way more certainty than I've allowed myself to feel. I was actually protecting an emotion of not wanting to be disappointed, of not wanting to be wrong, by not admitting how right I know I actually am. The reason most intelligent people don't do this is because they're scared of their identity getting locked into this sense of certainty. If you have built a mind that is truly curious, always searching for the truth, then you should also always be able to question that certainty, even if the certainty feels absolute in the moment. The dissonance and the distrust for the mind is very hard to handle. So then you pretend that your mind is trustworthy instead of facing everything you don't still know. And belief systems are like load-bearing walls in your entire psychological architecture. If you pull out one thing, then often an entire web of ideas falls apart. You can see this currently in online bubbles all the time, where people just cannot possibly they cannot bite one bullet on one topic, because if they were to admit that this one point is wrong, then the entire identity that tries to defend its belief system crumbles apart. This is specifically strong in politics and just drama YouTube, the drama YouTube space, where you have just a vision of a certain creator or a certain person, and you cannot fathom that this vision of this person might be wrong. Or worse, what if the vision of this person is a personal projection from your own insecurities? No, we can't have that. We must keep defending ourselves or defending our worldview, especially if it's making us feel so comfortable and superior when we can see how wrong everybody else is. The difference between a belief and a direct knowledge of something is that if you know something, there's actually no belief around it. When you know something, you don't need to believe in it. It is just known. And it is kind of like an intellectual cop-out for people who always want to prove everything with logic. Because in a way, the point is to say, this is just obvious, just look. And it's extremely unsatisfying. And I also find it very unsatisfying. That's why I think you can use language to really make it coherent again. But on a very foundational level, yeah, 1 equals 1. And I'm not going to explain it to you. So, in the same vein, if you interface with reality and you touch fire, you experience the fire on your hand, and this knowledge is not something that has anything to do with the belief. Interestingly enough, if you really question the nature of knowledge, you'll find that knowing and being are actually the same thing. You can only know something when you have lived it in your own experience. Then it is deeply known. And the sense that you cannot really be certain about anything or really know anything for like ever is because everything passes and you will forget even your past experiences, and you have just like a memory recreation of the thing. So this makes it so that even if you can know something for certain because you are not it forever. So you might doubt your own mind from what you have certainly seen in the past, which is again where the skepticism and doubt comes in. And this is where very manipulative people use this to gaslight you, right? That they tell you that what you saw isn't true. And once they have wrapped you up in this, gaslight dynamic, where they are now in charge of what you perceive because they can convince you that what you perceive is wrong because you're crazy, which is also politics propaganda, by the way. Now, this builds another identity structure of knowing that is super, super, super insecure and has a desperate need to keep consuming the propaganda and keep consuming all of this gaslight stuff, because imagine the immensity of noticing how hard you have been fooled. It is not nice. This is the precise mechanism that makes you fall into belief systems instead of knowing what is true, because knowing what is true requires realizing in all ways you have been absolutely wrong about this stuff. My one-on-one ego architecture audits are a protocol that I've developed to, systematically bring you to the sense of realization towards truth, to systematically dismantle your belief systems, understand where your belief systems lie, understand where you lie to yourself, and then have a clear mirror effect where you can see this for yourself, understand how your ego operates, and then move beyond it, which is really the recipe for a fulfilling holistic life where you know what you want and you move towards it. So if we were all more honest to ourselves and stop, circle jerking or cycle jerking, then we would all be way more content, because the lies that we're feeding to each other usually trap us in suffering. They trap us in suffering because our identity clings to something that is just not matching up to what is true. It's not matching up to what is real. So in all shapes and forms, science and labeling things like how science does it is extremely useful. But your mind will use these labels to pretend it understands something it doesn't understand yet. And the same with spiritual terms, like they kind of flatten the thing. So I find it extremely useful to not just think about yourself as a structure of belief systems in some like abstract sense, but to think about yourself as a network of meaning. Network of meaning in the sense means that every single thought you have or every word you use is not an accident. So if you use a certain word in a certain situation, it means that this word has some sort of loaded meaning embedded within it. And this loaded meaning is very individual to you. It is what this word means to you. And if you then reflect onto the meaning loaded within the word, you can find where your belief systems are and where like the structure of your identity is. Because you need to kind of deconstruct the relationship that you have to certain words in order to see what lies underneath. So this often means, okay, what does this mean? Is this true? Do you actually know what death is like? Could I expand my understanding of what death is like? Do I know what I mean when I say I feel uncertain? what is the sensation of uncertainty for me? And this might sound very abstract, but it really isn't, because these words point to something actually true. Most spiritual and philosophical beliefs are an attempt to turn this existential uncertainty into fake knowledge. And then you have this feeling of, certainty, but it is kind of without substance. And the sense of certainty without substance is what you see in social media in most places. And sorry to my fellow creators, but it is what I see the most of, where people speak from a position where they don't actually know what they're talking about. But the words that they use resonate with the audience that uses the word in the same vein. So basically, people mirror each other's lack of understanding, but then get the feeling that they do understand each other. And this is not true across the board, right? It really depends. But when you do have this sort of connection with somebody that you feel like, okay, what he says is true, then it's kind of like you vibrate on the same semantic frequency. So you have a reality model that is close enough to the way I speak. So something in the way I speak creates a sort of coherence in your own reality model that even if you don't speak like I do, you can recognize purely from intuition that what I say is true. And you don't really need to believe me. You don't really need to question me. I mean, do so, please. But when you hear me say something and your mind immediately clicks into, this is coherent, then it basically means that I'm connecting the semantic meaning in your brain into a way that kind of like patches out the gaps and connects things that weren't connected before. Then you see, okay, stuff wasn't actually that contradictory as I thought. So you can integrate different meanings into the same word, for example, and you are more flexible in the way you look at your own belief systems. Because it's not that all belief systems are wrong. It's just that depending on how your own emotions relate to these words, you are going to be, more inclined to believe. You're going to more inclined to believe it as a sense of identity, or you're going to believe it as a sense of, this is most likely true. The honest position is that there's very little you can actually know with 100% certainty, because only direct experience is knowledge as its direct being, like on the ultimate level. And the direct experience is very fleeting. But this is also sort of underselling the nature of truth. Because at the same time, although everything is quite fleeting, over an entire lifetime, you do accumulate a wide variety of experience that do actually integrate into something you can call true with a high degree of confidence, as long as you don't cling to it and are flexible in changing it when the moment calls for it. So when all belief systems drop, all assumptions drop, and you stop believing in things, you can either find sort of coherence in your reality model because of all the psychological work that you've done, and then you're going to feel quite content, or you can fall into this nihilistic cold loop where you think that nothing really matters. And if you fall into this nihilistic loop, then I want you to notice how all of these negative, I have to rephrase, all of the words regarding to how you relate to life, like nothing really matters, I feel maybe apathetic, or I don't really feel much emotions, or I really don't care much. Again, look at how the word that you're using is semantic meaning embedded, used, and basically wrapped up through logic, leading you back into an emotion which is the cause of this belief. So it's always the valence, like the way something feels like, that is causing us to project a sort of meaning narrative onto the thing, and then it becomes a belief system and it hardens. And yes, nihilism is also a belief system. Most philosophies are a belief system. That's why I don't consider myself a philosopher. I might be doing philosophy and I might be doing metaphysics in here, but I don't really consider myself a philosopher, although I know that is practically exactly what I'm doing. But I like to frame it more in terms of ontology, like the nature of being, or cosmology, the nature of how this cosmos works. Or hey, psychology, science, all of the stuff works well. And by that, I know I also am somewhat of a philosopher, right? Because I unite all of this stuff. So if you feel this resonates with you, if you notice, wait, everything is connected, if you sense that, oh wow, there's a coherence in reality that I didn't expect to find, then yeah, this is just the beginning, baby. that's where the fun starts. Yeah, you can dive deeper into this in the Substack article that I've written about phenomenology and how you should not confuse the texture of experience with the content of experience. And I also talk about holy architecture and how you can relate to these like more mystical experiences in a grounded way. Yeah, then check out my Substack article that you can find right here.